Hello everyone, this is Christian Mod Exciton Interactive, and by the time that we are done with this video, the main thing that we'll have finished is the ability to add a user to the database. So for instance, if I come in here into my register, type in some stuff, hopefully type the same stuff twice, use a different email than I normally do. Hit send, we should get the successful. Then if we'll talk about this during the video, but if I look in the database now, during the video we'll add another one. The one that we just created is added there, so we're now able to add users to the database. We'll also do a little bit of correcting of things that we spoke about previously in case of the forgot sub actions. If you're on the email, it'll now behave knowing that the email is part of login and not just registered. A couple other things that we'll take care of. But for the most part, our focus in this video is adding users to the database. As usual, you can find a link to the article for this video in the description below. Alright, let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is to make a small correction from the previous video. So let's go into into Visual Studio here, and the correction we're going to make is on the send screen. So if I go into the components, authenticator, go to the send screen.component.ts file, and we need to go down to the animate timer method. The problem that I've made here is that if you inside of here, so if the animate timer is defined, I'm not actually calling the hide method at all. So during the writing and testing that I found, of course, that the thing doesn't hide sometimes. So what we actually need to do is just move a call up here, and inside of here we'll call the onHidden method. So in this case, hide will take care of whether it's defined or not, so we no longer need this. So now now it will hide if the animate timer argument is defined. So then we just save that and close it, and that's that for corrections. And then the next thing that we're going to do is to do a little updating here. So if I go into the root of my project, I have this dependencies folder or whatnot. If I right click on it, I'll get a manage Nuget packages option. If I open that up, I'll see that I have these two packages to update. They're small updates, probably bug fixes and such. We'll just not include pre-releases. We'll just include check mark select all packages and choose update, and OK and OK. I accept, and those will take care of the updating. So the main reason that I found that updating is that I should have mentioned it while I was there, but one of the packages that we updated was the Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.all. And since we're going to be doing Entity Framework, you can see actually that it's included in, when you update it, it's included in the list. Thought that I needed to include, as usual in previous projects, right, Entity Framework and all the associated things that I would need. But I started including things and realized I was including the framework information and not the core. So, came to realize, of course, that the all is taken care of. So we have Entity Framework and all that installed, and we'll just do those updates. All right, speaking of Entity Framework and SQL Server, you're going to need to have access to, what do we want? SQL Server as some form or another. It can be local on your machine or a server somewhere, but we'll need access somewhere. If you choose to, you can download a version of it. I think that in this machine I'm using the Express Edition here, so we'll be accessing the LocalDB instance. So you could download that, or you can download Developer Edition. You could download a full version of SQL Server. It's all up to you, whatever you want to do. Also, I think that any of these that you download will also include it, but if it doesn't, I'm going to be using SQL Server Management Studio in this. Pretty sure that you can do some database stuff inside of Visual Studio. It's been a long time since I've done that, so I just use the SQL Server Management Studio. The links for these pages are included, of course, in the article. So with that stuff done, let's go back to Visual Studio. And now we're going to start by creating, so some of the stuff for naming and such that I'm using is the same as what the naming that you would get if you were to start a project using the template that includes authentication. So what we're going to do is go into the infrastructure folder. I'm going to right click and choose add, and we're going to add a new class. The class that we're going to name it here is called identity user, I think. No, application user.cs. I'm going to clean up my namespaces here, maybe. And so application user is going to inherit from identity. That does not look right. I can't spell. World's worst speller. Too much stuff there. We'll just do this. And so we need to bring in the namespace here from the ASP.NET Core identity. That's actually all that we need for application user, at least for now. So we have the user. We need a context. So the actual way that we interact with the database. So we're going to include or create a new class again in the infrastructure folder. And it's going to be called application DB context. Again, first step, clean up the namespaces. This thing is going to inherit from identity. Can I spell it right this time? DB context. And probably not. Application user. Once everything stops slowing me down. And I misspelled it somehow again. I don't care. There. Where am I getting all those N's and E's from? So that brings in the Entity Framework Core. That's all we need from that. Close that. And now, so that we're going to need to have access to the database. And of course, the way that we do that is through a connection string. If we look in the root of our project, we'll see that we have a file called appsettings.json and one that's called appsettings.development.json. If I open the development one here, what I'm going to do is create a new property within this JSON object called connection strings. And I'm going to name that this string that we're dealing with here is the default connection. Again, that's what it would be called if you use the template. Once again, I'm using the instance of LocalDB, and the database name that I'm going to use is called ASP.NET Core or ASP Core-NG-Webpack. Of course, you can name it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Use whatever instance of SQL Server you want. Still doesn't matter. Save that, maybe. And now we will go back in or go to the startup.cs file. First thing that we're going to do is do some configuration for identity. So if I go into the configure services method, whoops, no pasting. So I want services.add identity. Now we have IntelliSense. I don't have to worry about spelling. We need application user and identity role. We'll deal with the identity role here, and we'll add the roles in later. But first, we just need to get the ability to add a user to our application. I'm actually going to copy some stuff in and not type it. We'll look at it. So what I'm saying here for the user is that the allowed username characters, and we get this string of username characters that I'm allowing. So basically alphanumeric and a few special characters can be used. We're going to require that the emails be unique. So nobody with the same email address. That's a little bit of configuration for the user. Now we'll do the password. So the password will require at least one digit, require the min length to be 12, at least one lowercase, at least one non-alphanumeric, and at least one uppercase. Let's go here and let's import here. So for locking out, we're going to say the default lockout time will be 30 minutes. Max failed access attempts 10, and will allow locking out for new users. Last bit here. We'll say sign in. To sign in, we'll require that the email be confirmed, and we will not require the phone number to be confirmed. I'm going to actually scroll up here for a second so you can see here I did import a few things while we were doing that. System.io and what else? Identity, and we don't have it yet. We'll have one more import here in a second, but I actually need to finish that configuration. All right, so now what we need to do is to say add entity framework stores. Application DB context was the store. Next, add default token providers. Add default token providers. There we go. That might have included entity framework. Still not. Thinking real quick where it comes in. Probably one more. So let's go down here now and we'll say services.add DB context and application DB context. Let's do there it is. So do a little bit more configuration. See, this will import it from the SQL or entity framework. Use SQL Server, and we need to get the connection string. So we use the configuration dot get connection string, and we called it default connection. And so this we saw it previously that we had this get section from finding the local SSL port. This get connection string is just a shortcut for using it as long as you name that section connection strings. All right, and the last thing that we need to do is to use the authentication. So I'm going to come down to my middleware area and put this just after the use static files. So app.use authentication. We'll go ahead and rebuild, and I think we can close startup now. Let's go back to the browser here and do a little refreshing and see our error. So the main reason I'm including this is so that you can see it. And I mean, this happened when I first did, because I forgot. And it's basically, well, what it's saying, add DB context was called with configuration, but the context type, application DB context, so the class that we created, only declares a parameterless constructor. And it tells us what we need basically to have. So, of course, that's a good message, essentially telling us what error we made. So if we go back into the application DB context, what we actually need is a constructor, and we need that constructor to take in a DB context options object, and then we simply pass that into the base class. You saw that there was an import statement that happened there. Go ahead and rebuild. Back to browser, refresh. And we'll see it's coming back up. So let's go back into Visual Studio, close that file. What to do next? Let's actually create the ability to add a user. So we'll go into the Pages folder, Account, and the Register code behind. And of course, we're going to deal with the onPost method, but first we need to come up here and add a field here. So private, read only. This one's a user manager. Comes from the identity namespace. There was an import up there. And application user. I'll call it user manager underscore user manager. We need a constructor again. And we'll just bring this thing in. So we need the user manager. So the dependency injection system will take care of giving us access to the user manager. And now we go down to the on post. All right, so we'll say if model state dot is valid is equal to false. Then we'll do the same that we've done before. Model state will return the model state dot bad request. So next we want to create a user. User is a new application user. And we need to give it a username, which is request.username, and email, which is request.email. Don't beep at me. And so we got the next we want the result, and once again I forgot. So we're going to make this an async method now. Task. Give us another import because we want to say await, and we'll use the user manager dot create async, and we're creating a user, and we'll pass in the password. Perfect. Next we'll say if result dot succeeded. If it succeeded, then we just do this. We'll return our URL that the authenticator will then redirect to. Now if it didn't work, then what we're going to do is just say for each, and we're going to look in the result.errors. Just call that error. And for now what I'm going to do is just model state.add model error. The reason I'm for now is that I need to come up with a way of giving it the correct key. Because right now I just get it in this error object. You know, we have to match that up with the keys that we're looking for. But then I can just say return model state dot bad request. We'll figure out something for that later. All right, let me go ahead and rebuild. Back to the browser, refresh, rebuild, refresh constantly. Twiddle our thumbs. Come on. All right. So now what we will do, what will we do? Make something up. I shouldn't have made it so that these things were required yet. Shoot. Or at least not have changed this to password. Or password type for the input. Come on. All that just to get an error that I knew was coming. So if we take a look here, that the response that we're getting, actually that response that we're getting there is because I've already created the database when I created this, when I was testing this thing out. So you're going to ignore this for a second. And actually we'll take a look what I was talking about. Right now what we're getting is the error. So this error is coming because we're requiring the emails to be unique, and I already created a user with that. So what we're getting down here is I get this message, and then so we're going to need to probably use this message to create a key, right? Or something. Or what I might do actually is to create a new type. So instead of model state type, we'll create a database errors or something. I don't know. And identity errors, so whatever, we'll figure it out. But now let's try this again. I'll send it. So this is the error that I was expecting to see, and of course this happens. What it's telling us, so cannot open database, the name of our database requested by the login. That one's a little bit cryptic, but of course this one is there because there is no database. You just saw me delete it. So we'll go back to Visual Studio. Let me go ahead and close that. What we need to do is to actually create the database. And what we're going to do that is to use the Entity Framework and the sort of code-first approach to migrations. So what I need to do is to go into my Package Manager console. If that's not open for you, it's under View, Other Windows, and then inside of here there's Package Manager console. It just gives us a just gives us this console window, and I can't think of the scripting language for it at the moment, but whatever. PowerShell. So what we need to do is to add a migration. So all I'm going to do is type in add migration, and you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it first. Now when I first did this, when I was writing the article, I received an error. Every time I've done it since, I have not received that error. But if you do get the error, let's just bring this over. So if you can see that, maybe not, might be easier to read. So what I received was this error. I did the add migration first, and I received an error saying that the entity framework, so the entire framework and the core commands are installed, and it didn't know which one to use. So it's telling me all I had to do was use entity framework core / add migration. So if you get that error, you'll be able to fix it. Hopefully, like me, and never see that error again. So once we've done that, it's added our migration. Actually, you can see in here that it's created a migrations folder, and it's keeping track of the migrations in this snapshot and whatnot. So it's creating all these tables that we need, adding their columns, and that's for up and down. Just drops all of the tables. I'm not a database person or expert. I can handle basically this kind of stuff, but outside of that, you have to find somebody else. So we'll just close the migration. So now we need to apply the migration, and it helps if we go back to the Package Manager console and we just do update database. And we'll give that a second. I think actually it's going to throw up some errors. I don't know what it's doing as far as, that's all node stuff. I don't know why it's doing anything in there. Just ignore that. Now if we go back to, I wanted to show you, so if you open up SQL Server Management Studio, it'll come open with the connect to server window. You will choose whatever server. Again, LocalDB is what I'm using. If I connect to that now, we'll see in here got some test stuff going on there, and inside of the ASP core-ng-webpack, I know it's probably hard to read. I don't know how to zoom in on this, if it's even possible, but we've created a bunch of tables, and if I go in and I say select the top 1,000 rows for my users, of course this is empty. We don't have a user yet. Let's go back to, we don't need Visual Studio. Let's go back to the browser, and we'll say send again. So now we send, we got our little green screen, and we get redirected to the confirmation page. So where are we at? What was I doing? Oh, going back to SQL Server Management Studio, and all I need to do is to rerun it. Where is it at? Oh, execute. So now, again, hard to read, but you can see at least that there is information there. What we've done is added in our first user. And I think so as far as the identity for this video, that'll take care of it. Since we're going to do the same thing we did in the last video and do a little updating to the authenticator itself while we're at it. So go back to the Visual Studio, and I talked about, I think in the last video, how that if we reset, let's go in here and just add. So now if I hit the reset button, what I want is for this thing to transition back to the left control. So we're going to take care of that real quick. So I'm going to go into the source components, authenticator. First thing we're going to do is go into the control group. I want to modify it so when I right now, if we come down here and take a look at like show group from left, no matter what we do here, the focus is being called, and I want to have the ability to not call focus even when it's being animated. So let's do that by saying we'll pass in the focus optional boolean, and then we'll say, so if Lodash is nil, focus or focus. So if it's not defined, so you don't pass anything in, or it's true, then we want to focus. Otherwise, if it's defined, then it must be false and we won't focus. So that'll take care of from the left, and we do focus boolean and same focus, done. So control group is fixed. So we go to control pair, and what we want to do is, again, actually all we have to do is if we go to show group is going to call show group left and right for us. So and we already have focus provided to it, so we're just going to put focus into our calls for the showing group from direction. Save or close that. We'll go into the authenticator.component.ts file, and what we want to do is go on to the on-click reset, and let's see where I'm at. Yep, so all I did was put them above here. So if I just say this dot control pair collection dot show group, and we're going to show the left, so I wanted to say this dot control password group ID. Wait for my squiggly to go away. Yep. This control pair collection dot show group, this dot control email group ID. And again, way back when we created the ability that if the group is already shown, it doesn't do anything. So if we go back to the browser, put in a email address, click reset. Now we're going back and transitioning back. Except that I forgot that I wanted to say false, so don't autofocus. Take two and email, and we're good to go now, at least for that part. One more quick thing that we're going to change here, and I think I also mentioned it, if not in the last video, in the previous video, was that if we go to the next control, what we're looking at here is the email. So this is again assuming that the email only shows up in the case of register, which of course is not correct. If they are using a if they forgot their username or password, then the email is showing up. So let's go in and fix that. So what I'm going to do is come down here and go into the if the control email is valid. So if you think about it, if the sub action is username or forgot username or password, if it's invalid, the next control would be the buttons, so that's fine. So all we need to do is modify what happens if it's valid. Actually, you can see if we go to the login one, and if we go to forgot username, I put an email address, it goes over to the confirm email, which is not what we want. So we come down here, we say if this dot is sub action forgot password, or this dot is sub action forgot username, then we just need to focus button, whichever button. So whether it's invalid or not. If it's invalid, if the email is invalid, I'll go to the cancel button, and if it's valid, I'll go to send. Now we'll come down here, and I'm going to say else if, so this is explicit, is register, and I'm going to move all of this up here. I think that should take care of it for us. If we go back, let's go back to the forgot username, and Goes to the send button, ready to go. It's invalid now. So now it goes to the cancel button. And I didn't prepare for that particular one. So let's fix this. So what's happening is I was using Shift Tab to go back. So I went from the buttons, and since it's login, it thinks it should go to the Remember Me. So I guess we'll be fixing this one on the fly, or attempting to. We'll see if I can do this without having to make a correction next time. So we're on the reset button, is login. Here's our problem here. What we'll say is that, so if this dot is sub action forgot password, or this dot is sub action forgot username, then really the control that we want to go back to is control pair collection dot focus this dot control email group ID. This gets an else. Where's my brackets? You go up in here. Go back. Rebuild. Forgot username. Hey, go back. Shift tab. So I think that all over the place we have errors coming in. So now what I want to, so that was Shift tab from the email. Okay. This dot control confirm email. Yeah, so where I'm at, let's go in here and say something like, so if this dot is register, so if it is register, we're on the email, we'll go back to the password. Once again, back here, and we go down, go back up. All right, so it works in theory, but now I have to remember how I was telling it to go ahead and let the browser take care of it afterwards. I think we might just leave that correction till next time, because now I've forgotten and I don't want to just sit here. Or actually, let's see, what I'll do is take a look, figure it out, and we'll add that on to this video. Alright, we're back, and the mystery is solved. So what we have to do is to go down to the, so we're in the authenticator.component.ts file again, and what we need to modify is the tab or enter method. This, of course, is how we're saying that, you know, if we're on the username and we're using, say, Shift Tab, then this is where we're saying prevent default equals false. So we're allowing the browser to take care of the navigation. So we need to do the same thing in the case of the email. So we do the username, and the buttons have their own, and then everything else is taken care of through the default. So all I'm going to do is take what's in the default here for the moment, come up here and create another case. Case this dot control email key. Whoop. So that's naturally what's happening already. So what we need is to have modify if it's the shift key is held instead of going to previous control. And if we are, so if this dot is sub action forgot password, or this dot is sub action forgot username, then what we'll do is just say prevent default equals false. And we'll put our else here, move the previous key inside that. So now if we save it, go back, if we're in a forgot username, wait till it updates. Then if we're in the forgot username, if we're on email, if I hit tab, we go down to cancel, shift tab back to email, shift tab somewhere else according to the browser. Right now I guess I'm in the developer console tab, brings me back. So I think that's everything is then working correctly for that. And I'm sure there's something else I'm going to find that's broken, but at least for now it takes care of it. Of course, the main part, or the main deal for this episode, is to be able to create the user or the application user database and to have our application able to add users to the database. Of course, there's a lot more to do, and making sure that any errors that happen can be displayed correctly. But we'll save that for, and also sending out those emails. We'll have to wait for another day for all of that. What we're doing next, I don't know, we might do some addition to the getting ready for the emails, and I probably will do something for those errors, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. I know that your time is valuable. If you liked the video, please subscribe to our channel and click the thumbs up button, as well as share the video with your friends. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. And once again, thank you, and I will talk to you in the next video.